Watch The Atheist Experience live Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTAXP and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callaxp.
It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello, and welcome to Secular Sexuality, the ACA show that's about to do a deep dive into the vajayjay. I'm Kara Griffin, I'm your host, and I'm joined tonight by proud vagina owners, ExXtian Erin, who has the standard issue hoo-ha. Welcome, Erin.
Hi.
And Phoebe Rose joining us with the late 2015 factory upgrade. Phoebe, welcome.
It wasn't cheap, you know, but it was worth every penny.
Absolutely. Well,
Okay,
Erin.
Tonight we have a poll in the chat. So the poll tonight is, have you ever broken up with somebody because of their genitals? You can hear the results near the end of the episode. And in the meantime, we are going to be talking about vagina shame. So give us a call with your stories and questions at 512-991-9242. Or you can go through your computer at tiny.cc/call-sex, because the show is coming right now.
Well, this is the moment in the show, as we always have at the beginning, where we hear what is turning you on. So, who wants to go first? What is turning you on this week? I already know what one of the answers are going to be.
Meat.
Yes.
Meat.
Yes.
Lots of meat.
Say more about that.
So I went to a Brazilian steakhouse near where I work, and they had a buffet. And they had a man wandering around with just, skewers of meat that he was just slicing off in front of you. And it was just lovely. You had a little plate that you could leave it to rest on, and you could see the meat rest. And you see all the juices that rested out nicely on it. And then you'd this beautiful, tender bit of meat, this nice, throbbing bit of meat. It was just really, really lovely. Genuinely gorgeous meat. And that's what's been turning me on since I, ate it yesterday.
Yeah, and me too, since you sent the picture.
Yeah.
Well done. Yes, throbbing meat juices. Absolutely. Erin, how about you?
Okay, well, mine's a little bit less, interesting in that
Tame.
way. Yeah, literally because I have been going to kind of like older kind of stuff, I guess, in a way. As I've shared in other things, I only kind of left Christianity and fundamentalism, and therefore Christian like sexual purity culture like only a few years ago. So here I am digging through like old information that's been out for a while. And lately I have discovered Esther Perel. So I've been binging on her lectures. I'm listening to her book right now called Mating in Captivity. It's just like fascinating things. And I'm just constantly struck by how different her perspective is as like a clinical psychologist who talks about healthy sexual lives between long-term relationships, which I am in, how absolutely like upside down it is from what I was taught in Christianity. So I've been really loving that lately.
Ooh. And I love a good book review, so I am definitely going to be checking
It's a book.
There's
so Esther Perel, and the book is called Mating in Captivity. And then I think she has another book called maybe Rethinking Infidelity or something along that line. There's TED Talks. There's like so much stuff on YouTube in general if you're just looking to like get an idea of what she talks about. Just absolutely fascinating information just about relationships and how she talks a lot about like even just the evolutionary psychology of like sexuality and how humans are and how sexuality has changed in the last like few thousand years, specifically in the last 100 years, and where we're going to, which is really interesting. She speculates a lot about what sexuality will look like in our culture in 100 years from now and that sort of thing. So I'm just eating it all up. I love it.
Futuristic sex. Are there robot dolls in this? I feel like
well,
there have to be.
honestly, yeah, there's a lot of like, I mean, the sex industry and like this, culture of around sex in general is changing like at a way faster pace now than it has over thousands of years. So she does mention that too, about the role of sex, dolls, sex toys, and things that are not necessarily between another human. But the biggest thing she talks about is just like human nature in general. Like we romanticize this idea of monogamy, but if you look at the reality of how humans behave right now, I think she calls it more like this serial monogamy. Like we typically, and she validates every other type of relationship, so polyamorous and everything else, but typically the norm is that we are serially monogamous. So we have generally one partner at a time, but just at a time. So it necessarily means that we have divorces and we get remarried, and this is how humans have acted for many years. So it's really, really interesting. I would recommend it for anybody, just as a fascinating, almost like it's a kind of a scientific look at how how humans, oh my gosh, that came up out of nowhere.
A little bit of a Freudian slip coming out.
Yeah, no kidding. How humans have behaved. Like I said, I'm only a few years out. How humans have behaved over the last few centuries, and where she thinks it's going from here.
Excellent. Well, that sounds pretty exciting. I'm gonna have to check that one out because I think I grew up hearing some of the same misinformation you might have gotten. So it's always good to read more, learn more, root out some of those bad ideas. So excellent. Okay. Well, very good. I love it. I think that it is probably about time then to dive into our topic for this evening. Unless, Phoebe, did you have something you were going to add to that book?
No, I just want to know what's been turning you on.
Yeah, me too. I was going to ask you too.
Oh, I almost got away with not doing it, but I'm not cool like Christy, so I'll go ahead and share. Yeah. I also have a book recommendation, and it was a book that I recently found. I had a whole list of books that I was going to read before this episode on my list that just keeps growing faster than I can read things on it. But one that I really enjoyed that I just finished today was a book called Vagina Obscura. And it's basically, it's by Rachel Gross, who is kind of like a science writer. So it's written for a popular audience. It's not super technical, but it kind of goes over, similar to what you were talking about, Erin, kind of the history, but not so much about human sexuality, but about ideas that we've had about vaginas in particular, and the way that science has tended to ignore or belittle research about vaginas and vulvas, and going from their importance for sexual enjoyment, but also even just in terms of their importance in what they do in reproductive processes, or what we think they're for, and how the long hundreds of years of history of science and research on vaginas has been very much male dominated, and not exactly focused on the needs of vagina owners, which is kind of interesting, and I think contributes a lot to some of the topics that we're going to be talking about this evening, with people having shame and confusion and just not really knowing what's going on, because that's, I don't want to say intentional, but it seems like there's definitely been a systematic lack of good information coming out about the parts. So that was good. I recommend it. It's Vagina Obscura. So it's an easy quick read. It's not super dense, and it's pretty interesting. I definitely learned a lot. So
cool. I love a good book too.
I do too. I know. Yeah. It's a problem. It's getting to be a problem. My Goodreads list just grows and grows and grows, and then I can't read as fast as I would like to add things to it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I thought after grad school I was going to stop having that problem, but no, it continues. It's never ending.
It's a bad reads list and a good reads list.
Yes, that is the best. If you're not on Goodreads, like, come find us on Goodreads, y'all. I think that's a thing people can do. But go on there and read book reviews. There's lots of good ones. Okay, speaking of knowledge and patriarchy as it pertains to our topic, let's jump into vagina shame. And so I want to start off with, thinking about, for all of the body positivity and the patriarchy smashing that we've been doing as a culture and on this show, I hope, it feels rare that people actually acknowledge that there's a real problem with the way our culture and our society tends to think about the vulva, which is the term that I'm going to use much of the time in this episode, even though we say vagina. That we'll probably get into how that's not necessarily the most accurate term a lot of the time for the body parts that we're discussing. So am I imagining this problem, or is this a real issue? Do y'all feel like there's kind of a problem with the way society in general kind of treats the vulva?
There's a problem for sure, I would say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence that we have a lot of shame still as a society around the idea of our private areas. There's many nicknames that you will call it, the vajayjay and the punani, and there's a whole bunch of different names that we've used to just even address the area, because it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to even refer to it by name. You had mentioned earlier the use of the word vulva. Many people just say the word vagina, but that's kind of inaccurate when we're talking about what most people are speaking about. When we say vagina, you're talking about the internal canal of the functional part of the whole reproductive system. But what most people are talking about when they're talking about appearance or other things, it's the vulva, which is the outside, the visual part, the things that you can see on the outside of your, external part of your body. I think that the use of nicknames, when we look at like the products that are marketed towards vagina or vulva owners, so things like cleaning products and cosmetic procedures, and even just the vast amount of myths you'll see online about how it all works, like that all kind of acts as evidence towards the fact that we have a problem still in society. Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. This overuse of these like silly terms and euphemisms instead of just saying clinically and matter-of-factly the part of the body that we're discussing. It's like we're talking to a child, which also we don't need to be having children use these terms either.
It's like we call an arm an arm. We don't call an arm a.
Actually, I know
we don't. It's like we call fingers fingers. We call legs legs. Why does it that when it comes to genitalia, we all of a sudden become babbling messes of incoherence and we can't say what they are? Labia, vagina, clitoris, vulva, etc., etc. Perineum. Why is it these words that are just almost taboo, for goodness sake? And why do we perpetuate these myths onto children at a very young age? Why is it seen as a vulgarity to have accurate and sensible conversations with children when they're learning body parts? We don't teach children inaccurate terms for things intentionally for any other part of the body. You wouldn't call your stomach your food digester part, or I'm terribly sorry, I'm just going to put this in my speaking hole. You don't say things like that. That's just nonsense. Yeah. So why do we have all of this range of terms that are, even the dog disagrees, are just nonsense?
Yes, and do we imagine that by doing that we're not, alerting children to the fact that this is something shameful? Yes. This is something that we can't discuss. You can't ask questions about this. You should feel bad about having this on your body. You need to cover it up. You need to never mention it again. What is that going to do when they have questions, or if they have a problem that they need to discuss?
Or a person is a problem, for example. This is the kind of things that we end up with, because this kind of shame about those areas of the body allows people who are less savory, shall we say, in society to be less savory and get away with it under the cloak that, well, you're not going to say that because it's shameful. It's taboo. And these less savory people get away with less savory things because we've made it an unsavory topic when it's really just another bit of skin and another bit of function of the human body that evolution has said, yes, let's have some fun with it.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about like what we teach the children. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking to your kids about their body parts. And I think it is much more common that we will tell our young children. And I'm speaking from a mom of both a boy and a girl. We talk about both equally. You can talk about he has a penis. We talk about all of that. And we talk about what she has, and we use the correct terms. And I think that it is so easy. I mean, it's easier as a parent to give it a cute nickname because it's awkward. But I think that overall, long term, you're going to do a lot more damage because you set them up for, a lot. This is a whole other conversation about future kind of abuses that could happen. But start with giving them the actual correct anatomical words for what their body is called. Because like you said, Phoebe, you don't call your eyes your peepers or like something else. What is it? What does it do? And like, what are all the separate parts that you have, especially for little girls? I grew up as well not knowing exactly what all the different parts were, and you end up being confused as an adult because you're faced with real life situations and you don't know how to differentiate between the different areas and that kind of thing.
And it's a form of control. If you don't give children the language to talk about things, you constrain their ability to think about and understand and even do activities with those things. Like, I mean, I know
or
I
properly care for themselves.
Exactly. Right? And it's not going to prevent them from growing into adults and, realizing that they have a vagina. It's just going to hamper them when they then realize, oh, I now have a medical situation or an interpersonal situation or anything to do with this body part. I don't think it's helping anyone.
So it reminds me on this topic of an advert aimed at men with, failing, wooden areas, shall we say, failing to get the wood. The reason that I'm speaking like this at the moment is because I have to be very careful with the algorithms going around at the moment. It's not because I'm trying my hardest to be as euphemistic as possible, but the whole advert goes through and it's just every nickname they could possibly think of for what a penis is. Just boom, 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 boom. And it's just got round the bend where it's just so obvious that it's just a nonsense now that people can say these euphemisms and it used to be like one or two and now nobody has any idea what on earth they're talking about.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of having ridiculous ideas and not knowing what people are talking about, what are some of the ridiculous expectations or imagined problems that vagina owners may encounter? Or any particular examples y'all can think of?
Well, I had said that I would like to share some of my personal experience in this area. So I am currently mostly staying home with my kids and my husband and I have a business. But before that, and before I became an activist, I actually worked as an esthetician in the beauty industry. I was in the esthetician kind of world for 12 years, first as a person who does like waxing and facials, but then I also moved into laser technology stuff later on. So I have a lot of experiences meeting people who own vulvas and hearing what their insecurities and this sort of thing. So I think one of the things that I would always look back on is that every single person, it seemed like, I would say almost without fail, unless it was somebody I'd seen for a long time and they'd already done it on the first session, there was always some sort of a disclaimer. Am I normal? There was so often that someone would sit down in my treatment table for a very simple kind of like a waxing or whatever it was, and they was just a sense of insecurity always. And I would have to reassure them, like, I've seen everything and you are perfectly normal. But it started to like really impact me after a while. Like every single person that comes in here for a treatment has this inherent shame over the look, the appearance of their vulva. And so, I mean, to extend that, we have so many things that we can refer to back this up, that we have these products that are for treating the color of their vulva, like lightening products. We have cleaning products and deodorizing products because of the smell. We have other kind of cleaning products like douches. We have surgeries like labiaplasty, vaginoplasty. There is concerns about the pubic mound area. So whether you have a fupa or things like that, there are so many areas that are targeted simply to the aesthetic look of someone's vulva. And I wish I could tell everybody what I know and what I've seen. I wish I could just put it into your brain how many parts I've seen and how normal everyone is, because almost always it was the same concern over and over again.
I say, whilst you've done that in like a professional capacity, I did it as like a legitimate medical research capacity.
Right.
And I remember when I was selecting the surgeon that I wanted to go and have my many plasties done, because they do labiaplasty, clitoroplasty, vaginoplasty, vulvoplasty, the whole lot. You see a lot of vaginas when you're actually researching, because they will put front and center on their websites, this is what I offer, these are my results, look at my results. And the reason that I selected the surgeon is that here are my results. They are just everything. So everyone will look slightly different.
Yes.
Whereas some of them was like they clearly picked what they thought was the perfect set of vaginas. Whereas this guy's like, nah, here's like 100 different vaginas for you. If you want one that looks great, good for you. But what you consider to be great is going to be different to what someone else considers to be great. And it was just that level of openness that made me very comfortable going to see that individual to have my late 2015 factory upgrade.
I love that. Yeah, and it's so interesting that both of y'all had completely different exposures to all of these vulva images or real life vulva contact, and I feel like that would have been so helpful probably for everyone to get that at a young age. Yes. Before they start feeling all of these insecurities and wondering does this look right, because like we were talking about earlier, if your arms look like other people's arms, or and not that everybody has to look the same, but when it's all shrouded in mystery and kept a secret, and you can't even see a medical picture of it for fear of someone saying, oh, this is lewd, this may be pornographic if we show this to children. No wonder people are so insecure if they have no idea what it is supposed to look like. Heavy air quotes on supposed to. And you know what,
even at the most like superficial kind of search for it, you will see misinformation. So Absolutely. Like you mentioned medical textbooks, so many medical textbooks don't even depict the vulva properly. No. It's a very, very adolescent looking vulva. Lots of times there's not even a depiction at all of the clitoris. There's a misinformation kind of campaign. Maybe it's I would like to think that there is not on purpose, and that there's just this reworking that needs to happen, because if we look into the history of the medical field, like it was led by men for the most part for many, many years, and there was there's just a whole bunch of different circumstances that came to where we are now in 2023 and what is still being represented in our medical textbooks. But the reality is that it's really the accuracy is not sufficient at all.
No, it really is not. And this business of, trying to keep things out of textbooks, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm of the opinion that you're not helping kids by hiding information from them, generally speaking.
It comes back to the nonsense of these people who try to not allow their children to learn correctly, just learn what they want them to learn. So it's the intelligent design in biology classes nonsense all over again. And it is that kind of, we need to turn round to essentially a lot of PTAs and tell them to fuck off.
Yes, I'm sorry, but yes,
that's what we need to do, and we need to tell these people that, excuse me, you're not benefiting your children, you're not benefiting other people's children, and you're not benefiting society at large.
No, because what ends up happening is if you shelter these, if you shelter young girls, if we're kind of keeping it kind of targeted on that tonight, if you shelter them and you don't explain to them what they have, they're going to get into their teenage years, and they are inevitably going to try the curiosities. They're going to see things, and they're going to be seeing things that are of a standard that is not typical for a lot of people. So yes, I am in a way referencing typical porn. And so I would say that most of the people that I have met in my past, working in that industry, and this doesn't account for what's going on now, because I know that there is a shift happening even in that industry, and thank goodness. But most people who would come in to see me for a treatment for hair removal, whether it was waxing or laser, their insecurities laid mostly around the length of their labia, the color, and the general shape. Like, so whether it was too like fat, that's what they would say. Like, is this shape right? And I can't even, this part doesn't look right. And I remember feeling really quite sad that, like, no, this is completely normal. Like, I would tell you that it's more rare not to see this. This is like 99.99% of the people that I see. What you are thinking of is a standard that is not really acquirable for most people. So.
Yeah. And, that's a good point too. I mean, is there some extent, do you think, to which porn does contribute to some of these very restrictive, very particular beauty standards that people might be thinking of when they're, comparing themselves?
I think it can. Well,
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm just blabbing on about my whole experience. I want to say, just before we keep going, like, I'm not trying to talk down about the porn industry. I love porn. Porn is great, but I would say historically, yeah, it has been influential for people's insecurities.
Just like in terms of, very particular body types being depicted in very particular ways. Yeah. And I mean, I guess we could say the same thing of any kind of, beauty industry modeling. Exactly. It's going to show what is considered to be the quote unquote beauty standard, which for some reason always seems to be like very thin white women.
Yes.
Which does not really describe most people.
No.
But getting back to the original question, I think that the porn industry is changing, but I think that certain pornography can, if you only expose yourself to that kind of pornography. Because there is a lot of pornography out there, and it is all about personal preference and personal taste at the end of the day. But there needs to be, and I understand it can be very difficult to somebody who did suffer a lot of body dislikes growing up, to actually go, well, hang on, I may want this idealized version of what is there, but how realistic is this idealized version of what I'm actually striving for? And porn, historically and still moving forward, is a fantasy world of fantasy people doing fantasy things with fantasy standards.
Yeah.
And I think trying to hold yourself up to those fantasy standards is very damaging if you don't see them as a fantasy standard. And I think that's part of the problem that we have with this gulf of poor teaching about vulvas, clitorises, labia, etc. It's like just filled by what people are going to see, and the largest plethora of vulvas and clitorises that you're going to see are in the porn industry. So if you watch porn and that's the first exposure you've had to real genitalia, you're going to think that that's what it should look like.
Right.
Yeah, of course. If there's nothing else available, what else are people going to see? And, like you said, it's not that there's anything wrong with seeing that, but if you don't have a realistic idea to begin with, you're not going to come away from that with a realistic idea.
Yeah.
I dated someone who used to call porn training videos, and it was like a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I don't think it really was a joke. And
that kind of sadly is true for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. If that's all the information you get, then you're going to come away with a skewed view.
I think that it goes hand in hand, like a lot of these things do, but like, talking to, just promoting proper education and comprehensive sex education and using proper terms and other things like how to consume porn ethically. And there's other avenues which I think are doing a better job in representing many, many different kinds of body types. And I think that like maybe just as part of one of the ideas of what's happening is this, when you go to like these, you know, these free porn sites, so you get a lot of the same thing over and over again, because they're often put on by a huge production company, and they have a type that they get, and they, you know, when you do see, you know, these other kinds of like sex content that's out there, you do get a better representation of different kinds of bodies, and there's different niches, and you can go like all down those different avenues, but those things kind of go hand in hand. Like, how do we have a healthy look at sex? How do we have a healthy look at online content? And like, where's a better place to see a better representation of body types? It's not necessarily from like a certain porn company that produces the same kind of content over and over again that's targeted towards the male gaze.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an unreasonable sort of expectation to even put on the porn industry, to expect that you're both going to be producing these very particular fantasies and entertainment, and also you need to be educating people who don't even know what the proper words are for their body parts. That's a lot to expect. I think maybe we can fill in some of those gaps in other places.
All I've got now is it's just educating Rita in my head. That's all I have now. It's just educating Rita in my head. That's all I get.
Yes, education, folks. It's a good thing. And okay, speaking of perspectives on this, Phoebe, do we have some calls we can take?
We do have a caller on the line. So yes, without further ado, let's take our first caller of the night. We have Helen, who is phoning in from Florida. Their pronouns are she, her. Hello, Helen. You are live on Secular Sexuality. You're talking to Cara, Erin, and Phoebe. What would you like to talk about tonight?
Hello, my fellow vagina owners.
Hello.
I'm calling in because I originally pitched this idea to Cara. God, what was it, like a couple months ago? I don't remember when it was. Anyway, because this is something. Yeah, it was a couple of months ago. And this is something that I've been, you know, kind of thinking about and deconstructing, because I'm 45 now and I'm still dealing with ideas about, like, you know, how my vagina is supposed to look, and, you know, and how those ideas of like images that have infiltrated my life for a very long time have affected me. And like Erin was saying, I used to work as an esthetician as well, did waxings, all that sort of thing. And I didn't really think much about other people's vaginas. And as a polysexual person, I've also had sex with other women. Didn't really think too much about their vaginas and how they looked. I just wanted to have a good time. But for some reason, when it comes to my own, I'm like, there's these, you know, bad ideas that kind of infected my brain. And I have to remind myself that it's like, no, your vagina is normal. It's fine. Don't worry about it, you know. But it's always been this idea of how the male gaze, and we were talking a little bit about the porn industry, and it is getting better, which is great. But we do know that, you know, as soon as you go to a certain porn website, you're going to get, like as Cara was saying, like thin white woman with, like, you know, whatever the industry said is the ideal vagina, which I don't think is really a thing.
It's like a mythical thing out there. Yeah, it's so uncommon.
Like standard.
Not that it's wrong. Not that it's wrong. It does happen, but it's so uncommon to have that the look with like absolutely no internal, like, or the labia being visible at all. You know, everything's tucked and everything's the same color, and like that's so not common.
No, that had not even occurred to me that was a thing to be insecure about until I was already an adult and somebody was talking about it, and I was thought, oh no, wait a minute, is it supposed to be like that? I hadn't even thought to get, you know, self-conscious about that. But, you know, you can bring up, you know, just about anything and present it to enough people, and they'll think, oh, I'm the one that's wrong. It's me. I'm wrong. But that's not it.
Well, yeah. And I think also too, like we, you know, this was kind of something else that I was also thinking about, because like we were talking about like the bleaching products and people getting surgery and all these different things. And I understand if, you're using your vagina in a professional manner and, that you have to do it for your job. I get that. But like most, like 98% of the population is just a normal person, trying to get it on or whatever. So to me, or these ideas have been kind of infiltrating our brains are very toxic. Also, too, because like most people that are having, are interacting with the vagina aren't thinking about all the stuff that's going around in our own brains, but it's our own self doubts, our own, these things that have been kind of taught to us that I really wanted to start to break down and have a conversation about, because only through my fellow vagina owners we can have these honest conversations and talk about like these weird anxieties and this weird bullshit that's kind of been put upon us, which really doesn't hold up to reality in any way.
Yes. Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, and I mean, I think you make a really good point too about how this is something that's going on in our own heads, and probably nobody else who's seeing our bodies is thinking any of this stuff and going, does it look like that one labia is like a different size than the other one? Oh, hold on a minute. Like, right. I don't know, maybe I'm not in other people's heads, but I bet that's not what's going on in there.
That is absolutely the common thing. It's absolutely down to the most minute detail, the nitpicking over like this folds over here and it's not the same on this side, and like it's incredible how harsh people can be on themselves. My question for you, Helen, is what are you doing currently to help combat that? Are you looking at other images? Are you trying to, get a better idea of what is a normal looking vulva? Like what has been helpful for you?
It's not so much as look. I have like a vagina coloring book, which it was gifted to me, and great. There's all types of different vaginas in that coloring book. And because you're actually sitting there coloring, and thinking about it, you're not really. It just becomes something that just is. So that's one tool that I've used, and also too, I've also just stopped being so judgmental on myself and just being like, this is what you got. This is your body. And just kind of being okay with it. Occasionally I'll check in with my partner and I'm like, is my vagina okay? He's like, yes, you have a very nice vagina. And I feel,
isn't that funny how that works though? How often are those thoughts simply generated from our own minds? I mean, I'm sure there's experiences out for people who have had horrible things said to them. I'm not saying that it never happens, but I would say that for many, many, many of us, if you reflect on like what has been the feedback, so often it's never come from someone externally, or so often it doesn't come. I shouldn't say never. It does come externally. It's something that's happening kind of on an internal level, that we are the ones that are being self-critical of it. And if you bring it up to a lot of people, in my experience, if you bring it up to a guy, they're like, "What are you talking about?" They like don't even know what they're, It's fascinating how little they give a shit about that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in, and I'd just like to say something that I experienced when I went and I flew all the way out to Thailand to have my factory parts upgraded. And one of the things that was really amazing about, we had our own little community, and the nurses would come round to the hotel we were staying at and they'd make sure everything was going okay. And a few of us, we would, all got to know each other, Westerners, all spoke English, European, American, Canadian, etc. And one morning we were all in this room together, and she said, "Well, do you mind if I just do the checks here? You're all here." And then she went, and we went, "Yeah, okay. Oh, so you're now all having a vagina party together. It must be wonderful for you."
Yeah, a vagina party. I feel like we're having a vagina party this evening.
And so much fun.
And just, it was one of those things where I think that community, if I hadn't had that community, I would have been a lot more critical of my own genitalia. But where we were just like, well, okay, this has been happening, and this has been happening. What kind of results have you been getting? And it was just like, well, okay.
Phoebe, were you able to actually see the other people in the room, like what their results were from that?
If they wanted to show, a couple of my friends was like, yeah, okay, this is what we've had. This is what I've had. And it's like, yeah, well, then...
Right.
Yeah, it
And
was,
you
it
and you
was
could
fairly
even
amazing.
you could see even, from those experiences, like how turned out exactly the same, right? And that's the same as our experience, is that it's not, nobody has the same thing. It's a very
There are no
individual.
facsimile genitalia.
Nope, not at all.
No. Well, yeah, that's
so,
a really great point. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Helen.
No, I was going to say, like, and this is something that I have to, deconstruct, because it is all, it's just what's going on in my own head, and that, and also too, like, it's just, nobody can tell you who you are or what you're confident about and how you feel about things. So for me, I've been looking at this, trying to come out of myself. And if I was talking to a friend that was having the same problem, I'd be like, your vagina is fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, if it functioned properly, then you're okay. So I think that's where I'm kind of coming from. Like, look at, like, talk to yourself like you would talk to a fellow vagina owner and be like, it's okay. Like, your vagina is fine.
Yes.
We're so
I think
much
that's
harder.
a great point, because probably none of us would ever be projecting these, very minute anxieties onto someone else, like, ever in a million years. We would not be looking at someone else, be like, is that, that's an interesting shade. But like, never.
It just doesn't happen, right? Yeah.
No, I just feel like, again, it just underlines how much of this messaging that we get, that is completely nonsensical, disconnected from reality, unscientific, coming from all sorts of nefarious sources, like, industries that want to sell you products, patriarchal, particularly, religious oriented or motivated or politically motivated educational materials. These are the places that these ideas are coming from and getting into our heads. This is not factual information in any way. It's not representative of how bodies are. And I think keeping that in mind, for me, is helpful, at least. Yeah. Well, thank you for putting the bug in our ear for doing this, Helen. I think this is a really important topic.
Absolutely.
Such a good topic.
Yeah, I thought it was a really important topic to discuss. So thank you, guys. I'll let you get on with the rest of the show, but have a great night. Thank you so much. And I will continue watching and go get myself another drink. So you guys enjoy your vaginas too. Have a great night.
Thanks for joining the vagina party.
Yeah, I'm glad we helped you out there, Helen. Yeah.
Right.
So yes.
All right. Well, that was an excellent call. I'm glad we had that. I think this might be a good time to see what else has been going on around the ACA.
Like, is there a swimsuit competition? I know it's not Miss Universe.
Like 4 days of amazing gay leather pageantry.
Yes.
And I'm talking like down home.
Doing it.
Down home Texas pageant. Plus bear plus gay.
And they were trying to reconcile modern quantum physics with Eastern mysticism. Okay. And they did a really good job of it, right? I mean, it was all bull, right?
Wait, so why did they do a good job of it?
Because they made it sound reasonable.
Okay.
So, in our second segment, just like Richard said, we're going to be traveling down to 1950. I'm hearing from our producers it's actually Florida in 2023. Hard to tell the difference, my bad.
And they have to be match up perfectly.
Okay.
And when I'm looking at those two things, they match up perfectly.
Wow, that's great. Well, that's wonderful. I think you should tell NASA and then come back to us.
I'm not telling anybody.
But
you're telling
why
us?
are you telling us?
Thanks,
Mark.
Well, guys.
Talk to you later. Bye. He called me young.
I wasn't going to say, really young. Can you provide some evidence of that claim? Because I don't see...
All right. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I am thoroughly enjoying our vagina party here this evening, and I am ready to continue with our discussion. And I was wondering, we have talked a lot about the male gaze and, assumptions about what things are supposed to look like and everything like that. Do y'all have any experiences you can share about any of these sort of judgments or assumptions that you feel society has made related to parts?
I have so
Parts
many
fun
stories.
known. They're not parts unknown, they're just parts fun known. I mean,
Oh, that's good.
I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of different individuals who have had penises, shall we say. And some of those people have been individuals who would typically identify as male, and some people who would not identify as male, but they've had a good penis on them. And as somebody who used to have a fairly decent penis myself, I say, it was a nice penis that I used to have, and it's got a very good upgrade to it. I can say I was, a fairly toxic penis owner at points, and I was one of these people that was not a great, penis owner. I was very, do I really want to stick my penis in that fanny? Do I really want to do it? And it was just a bit, I wasn't the greatest. It was just like, oh, I've got this far. I kind of have to finish now. And it was a bit like, oh, well, there you go.
Do you think, were you having like apprehensions about the act itself? Did you have like criticisms about what you were experiencing? Or did it have something to do more about like what was going on for you and your own transition history?
When I was getting to understand my transition and I was understanding, some of this might be apprehension. Some of it was just that, I'm 18, I've got testosterone flowing around me. Do I really like the look of what's down there? It smells a bit. I'm not going to do that. Why would I stick my penis in that fanny that's in front of me? I mean, it's just like, well, hang on a minute. Do I really? And it was fairly shallow because it's a fanny, and I just wanted, something that was better looking than that. And it was a bit of a turn off, really. But that was 18-year-old testosterone fueled lunatic me, not really understanding what it was like. And, I was there and I was one of those, arseholes that did it.
I have a question, one more question about this, follow-up question. Do you feel like a lot of your impressions, like that led up to these experiences, were there kind of things that you had been taught, even like not maybe on purpose, but because of like the group, the circle that you hung out with as a youth? Like, what were some of the things that were said about women and their vaginas and things that may have contributed to kind of overall?
So there was a lot of entrenched misogyny in the early 2000s when I was growing up. There was an awful lot of it in the group that I was in, and it was basically, if it's not perfect, it's not going to be a great shag. You're just going to, have the bad Austin Powers moment. You're not going to be the spy who shagged me. You're going to be the spy who got told to because you're not getting fucked tonight. And it was very shallow like that. It was one of those things where, from the perspective of somebody who was looking for good sex, if it didn't look right, and my perspective of what looked right was, quite warped as an 18-year-old testosterone fueled, probably a bit drunk idiot.
Right.
It was, absurd.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful too, that you bring that up, that, if there are these occasions where, people are having expectations about how it's supposed to look or saying something, unkind, that's probably coming from something that's going on with that person, whether it's their misunderstandings or misperceptions or this, perhaps
miseducation as well, right?
Yes.
How much of this is influenced, like you had just said, like also what's going on internally with that person, but how much would you even say, Phoebe, was your impression of what it was supposed to look like, what the perfect vulva looked like, was affected by what you had seen in the same things that we talk about that give women insecurities, right?
So what you brought up earlier was textbooks.
Yes.
Biology classroom textbooks and biology classroom education on that, and sex ed at school was frankly not worth the toilet paper it was written on in some cases.
Yeah.
Because, it was this idealized, it was cross-sectional, it was very, oh look, this is how you do it, etc., etc. I mean, we did sex ed in RE classes. That's how absurd it was at the school I went to. So the RE teacher would go, well, I have to say this to you, blah, 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 blah. And
Don't
you never
do it. Right?
Don't
Yes.
do it.
Don't
But
do
it
it.
was, but she was mandated by law to, you know, I have to promote safer sex here. I have to tell you about a condom, etc. I have to, you know, this is how a condom goes on, etc. And that was about it. I mean, it was all on like a display model, and it was never this is what it should look like, and there was never any positivity surrounding it. And it was all very much, oh, you'll explore that one day, blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. And it was like, well,
And
I've no
often-
idea what it's supposed to look like. It
Right.
reminds me of the South Park episode, Where's the Clitoris?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and so often the sex education that people are receiving is very medicalized. You know, it's
Yeah.
talking about like, this is functionally how it's done, and this is
Yep.
the risks on the worst end of the, you know, the spectrum of the risks. I have yet to meet somebody who kind of grew up, I was raised in the same kind of generation. None of it was really pleasure focused, which is, I think, the shift that's happening now, right? So when as
I
soon
mean,
as you
there
add
was-
pleasure to the conversation, you kind of have to add the clitoris onto the diagram, at least. Start
Yeah,
there.
I mean, there was no discussion of, well, this lube is different and this is this. I mean, I remember the teacher said, well, dental dams are a thing if you're doing oral sex. And it's just like, really? Really? And it's just like, okay, and that was about as diverse as it got. Condoms and dental dams is about as, you know, diverse
And
as
diagrams of
sex.
adolescent people. Yeah.
There you go, diagrams of adolescent. So the three things that I learned in sex ed in England from a religious education teacher was condoms, dental dams, and this adolescent idealized version of, you know, biological diagrams with the cross section going through it. Yeah, there you go, and that was about it. So I was going to be
Have
that
fun.
toxic prick that, you know, went round with.
But how could you
at
not
the
have been?
time?
Honestly,
I was this. So
I would
yeah,
like
I
to
was a yeah.
Speak to that. Like, how could you have not have been? Obviously,
yeah.
honestly, because if you're raised with that narrow scope of what to expect when you see somebody who does own a vulva, what else are you supposed to expect when that's it? And maybe your own conversation in the locker room, and then porn or whatever else you might have been exposed to. What else could you have been at the time?
And these same messages too, that you know, we've talked about how, you know, some of these religious messages make, you know, vagina havers feel ashamed and dirty, and this is how it's supposed to be. You know, at the same time, boys are getting the sort of other side of that message as well, which is that, you know, you're supposed to be a particular way. This is how masculinity is, and women are, you know, for your enjoyment and pleasure and to impregnate. And if that's the only messaging you're getting, of course you're going to think of them as, oh, this is kind of gross and there's probably something wrong with them. And, you know, pleasure didn't enter into the
just
conversation.
following on from what Erin said, I mean, it was worse after sports matches. I mean, I was a soccer player, a football player, and I mean, you'd go into the locker room afterwards and you'd just, you know, these were quite violent football matches at times, because you were playing teams you really didn't like, and I played in goal, and you'd get the testosterone flowing in those games, and you go back to the locker rooms, and some of the conversation there were lewd, crude, and quite disgusting about, you know, you got her over the table, and did you get a good look up her vagina? And I mean, I'm talking technically correct here. Up her vagina. Did you get a good look up there when you know, bent her over the table? And it's just like, hang on a minute, and look back on that, and you go,
when you think about that, like,
yeah, no wonder I was a toxic prick waving their prick around. It's just horrendous.
Yeah, this is and I think that's so important to recognize too when we're talking about the problems with the male gaze and patriarchy. You know, this isn't to say that, you know, the problem is that men are bad, or, you know, people with penises are out to attack people with vaginas, or anything like that. It's that this messaging is bad for everyone. This is sexist. This is, you know, inherently violent, you know, both, you know, metaphorically and in some cases literally, and that's harmful to everyone who's getting that messaging. And this isn't like a, you know, penises versus vaginas argument. This is bad for everyone. and it's not improving
and we could
anyone's
probably-
interactions.
We could probably flip that script on another episode if we talk about, penis shame, right? Like this is a problem. It's holistic. It affects everybody. Today we're mostly talking about how we, as people who identify, as women and have, our own shame things and how this is developed. Yeah, sorry. I apologize.
No, you're good.
People who are even adjacent to this topic, right? Like, how has this affected us? Sorry about
But
that.
I say,
oh, no, you're good.
But what it did
it's
do-
like it's about that, but we know that this topic affects it affects everyone. Even people who are on the ACE spectrum. Like there are ways that this would affect everybody, even if you're not ever intending on having sexual intercourse. It's not even about sex necessarily. It's about how you feel when you look in the mirror and what kind of messages you've been messages you have in yourself anyway. So yeah,
absolutely.
But just to put a nice bow on that, what I was talking about, it did make me have this bizarre and unhealthy, idealized version of what I wanted my own genitalia to look like when I eventually got the genitalia that I wanted. And what Erin was saying earlier about the clients that she saw complaining about these things, in my head, I'd sit there some nights and I'd cry, well, I won't get the perfect genitalia. I won't get the perfect this, that, and the other. And it's just like, ooh. And it's really difficult because I had expectations of what I wanted my genitalia to look like. And I was fearful that I'd never get that because of the culture that I'd been brought up in, to go, well, if it doesn't look perfect, it's not worth shagging. And I would be like, well, if I don't get the perfect genitalia that I want, will I ever get, sex? Will I be just somebody that's got like this ugly, floppy sets of labia and vulva that no one wants to go anywhere near because I was like that.
Right.
Yeah. And then so how did your perspective change after, receiving the late 2015 Thai model? Did that give you a more like a sense of empathy, or how did that?
It was very much an opening up, because I'd done a lot of research. I'd looked at a lot of vaginas before I went there, and the whole culture that when I was out there, because I was in Thailand for nearly 8 weeks, and you saw a lot of people, and the surgeon would see between 4 and 5 people a week, and you got to see a lot of vaginas, and you made a lot of friends, and you saw a lot of things, and he would comment about how your vagina was doing, and he was like, well, that'll go down, that'll look normal, etc., etc. Normal is whatever your body says it is. And it's just like, well, okay, if you need, so if the surgery is not taken properly, we can just, do a couple of revisions here, there, and everywhere. And he was just so calm. He was just so relaxed. It was just like, get over yourself, effectively. But when about a year and a half later, I finally realized that it didn't matter to me what my genitalia looked like. And I mean, I go off and I do have, waxing of that area done, because I personally think it feels better. I personally prefer the way it looks. But it isn't one of those things where I go out and do it and I'm going to nitpick or worry about what it looks like down there.
Yeah. And I feel like, you've done a great segue into the next segment that we were going to talk about, which is, we've kind of discussed and probably beat to death that, okay, there's no exactly perfect way that it's supposed to look, big lips, small lips, asymmetrical lips, like, okay, there's all kinds. But does that mean there's anything wrong with having, cosmetic procedures or alterations done? And I think we're definitely leaning towards probably not.
I wouldn't say
thoughts
so
on that. Yeah. No. So how do we walk that line to where we say, okay, it's probably normal, it's probably beautiful, and if you want it to look a different way, that's okay too.
I really think that it's not a lot different than any other cosmetic procedure that you would do, elective procedure that you would do. So, I mean, there are first of all, there's legitimate medical and other reasons why you would undergo some sort of cosmetic elective surgery on your vulva or vagina. Some people experience extreme distress over the appearance or the function of their lady parts. I think the key here is that everyone has a broad awareness and of the full spectrum of normal, first of all. That once you debunk the myths of what you're supposed to have, and then you kind of process that, deconstructed that whole idea, and if the anxiety doesn't go away, then we're just dealing with something that is very similar to any other cosmetic procedure. If it makes you feel more like you, it makes you feel more comfortable in your own body, then you can do what you want because it's your body ultimately. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah.
Just to follow on from that, it's about giving the individual the choice to make the decision for themselves, as opposed to having the individual feeling that they should have certain pressures to look in a certain and specific way. Because we're going down a very fine line, as some people would say, but it is also a fine line that can be very easily weaponized by those who are opposed to cosmetic procedures of any description. It can be a fine line where some people can go overboard. And I think the medical community themselves do have a lot of responsibility here, because they need to understand that, yes, some individuals will be going through certain difficulties, but some people they'll want it just because, well, they prefer the way it looks. I mean, if you take Cara, Erin, and myself, we all have noses. You have 3 different noses. And some people will decide that they want to have different shape noses. But just look at the 3 of us. We have noses. They're all different shapes. They're all different lengths. They're all different sizes. The nostrils are all different sizes. The protrusions of the septum are all different. It doesn't mean that any one of our noses are any different from the perfect norm, but they're different because noses are different, vulvas are different, and it's the same. No 2 noses are going to be the same. No 2 vulvas are going to be the same.
That's right. I think that's a great point. And I love that you made that comparison, because it reminded me of when you say no 2 noses are the same. So I definitely have a very similar looking nose to my mom. And she was very self-conscious about her nose. And to be honest, I have been as well. And she went to get her nose, quote unquote, fixed. And she's had some cosmetic surgeries to change the shape of her nose. And she would be telling me all about how, oh, I fixed it. It was so ugly before, and now it's so much better. And I'm like, Mom, I have the same nose.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, no, it looks good on you. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Somehow it looks completely different on you.
Yeah. And I even went to pick her up from one of her appointments with her surgeon after she'd had it, adjusted the shape a little bit and the size and everything. And I walked in and he goes, oh, I can fix yours too.
Oh
no, please.
Like, no,
I'm fine. I'm fine, thank you.
I do think there is a pretty heavy responsibility on the surgeons and people who are actually performing these surgeries. So the second part of my experience in the beauty industry, when I was working in the medical field, I mostly did laser resurfacing things, but I went to a conference, a whole production or a lecture on labiaplasty, and we were talking about the ins and outs, no pun intended, of the labiaplasty and what is the most common requests for that, and kind of how they go about assessing whether somebody's a good candidate for that. And I think the one that I was a part of anyway, there was quite a bit of topic conversation about informing the prospective patient on what is normal and managing expectations, because a lot of the people were coming in with the expectation that they could somehow remove the labia in a way to make it look more pretty. That was the thing that people would often say, the word, I want it to look more pretty. And there was like a conversation going on here, but like, well, you know what, these parts are actually well within the average size. And so let's talk about what average is and kind of like look at what's normal. And then if you're still really wanting to go through with it, for sure, we can go ahead and book surgery. But let's talk about first whether you have a realistic expectation, which is, I think, really similar, as, to a lot of what plastic surgeons, if they're good ethical ones, of what they do too. When somebody comes in and says, I want a triple Q size double breast implant,
triple
like,
Q
well,
size double F.
Let's talk about what's a healthy
Lolo Ferrari, eat your heart out.
What's a healthy maximum for your body shape, and what's going to be healthiest for you, and whether we can go forward with that. Like, there is some ethical things going on there too. So
yeah.
But you've
reminded me of back pain.
But you've reminded me of you reminded me of a television show that used to air in Britain called Eurotrash, which had which was hosted by this Frenchman named Antoine de Caunes, and it was one of these shows that was incredibly sex open. It wasn't necessarily sex positive, but it wasn't also sex negative. It was just sex open. And there would just be, taking the mickey out of all these things. And it would be like, so which country has the worst nude beach in Europe? Copenhagen, because it's never warm enough and the summer lasts about 3 minutes. And it would be like shots of Copenhagen nude beach, and it would be like, hey, look, it's a vagina, it's a penis, it's a set of breasts, etc. And that was a show that I discovered when I was in my early 20s, and it was one of those shows where it was just like, people exist. Different vulvas exist. Different penises exist. Different boobs exist. Oh my God. It's just like, and this show that was designed as a bit of a piss take show, because it was really high production value, but it was made to look like it was, like proper Euro trash. Absolute genuine Euro trash of a show. But what it did was, they would have segments on it where they would be like, hi, I'm a dominatrix, blah, 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 blah. And look, I'm making my sub wave their genitalia around just because I want them to. It's like, this is like Channel 4. For those Channel 4, that's like basic cable television in Britain. And it's just like, wow. And it's just like, but on the flip side of that, there was another show that I remember watching when I was about 17. It was called Designer Vaginas. And it was about women in pursuit of returning their vaginas to their virgin state to have better sex.
Oh my God.
Oh boy. So is this going to be like about some kind of like tightening situation?
Often,
Oh boy. What? Okay, I've got to ask, and this is a good segue into another one of the topics we were going to talk about, which is, to what extent should people actually be worried about the shape or size or aesthetic appearance? I mean, wow, this sounds like it's probably getting into a very, I want to say pseudoscience-y field as far as
the shape is
virginal vaginas. What exactly is that supposed to be?
First of all, the whole thing is a myth.
Yes,
not how it works, people. It's not that it gets, this whole idea that perpetuated by mostly religions about virginity and how that fundamentally changes a person's body once you have a penis inserted into it. That's not how it works. Yes, I mean, the hymen's a real thing, but so many people don't even have that by the time that they're in their mid-teens. It's like such bullshit, the whole idea. So first of all, debunking the whole idea of virginity and what that looks like, and educating people about what the vagina does and how malleable the whole situation is, even after kids. Honestly, there's a lot of debunking that needs to happen out there. There's a lot of misogyny towards people who have had anything besides no sex and no children. So I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions out there.
Yes, the idea that if you have had sex with multiple different partners, that somehow damages your vagina in a way that having sex multiple times with one partner
with one person
would not.
There's a meme out there that says something like, dude, you're not so special that you think your penis can like fundamentally change a person's body or whatever. Like, get over yourself.
Right. This is not a thing. Let's just put that one to bed now.
I feel like the meme should be, dude, where's your ego?
Yeah. Exactly. So, okay. I want to also talk about another myth-laden topic, which is when we're talking about vagina shame, even though obviously not all vagina havers have periods, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about period stigma while we're here today. What do you think it is about periods that we are still dealing with this stigma today? And what do you think would help people feel less dirty and ashamed about that particular bodily function?
Right. Well, I think this one goes back to pre-written history. I mean, just look at the Bible and how it talks about women who are menstruating and how many days they had to stay away out of the camp because they were
from the house
unclean.
and stuff.
Yeah, and even if you look at, there's even in modern Judaism, there are still regulations around whether someone is, if a woman is regulating. There's still regulations around whether a woman is menstruating and how they have to sleep in separate beds, and there's so these ideas go back a long, long way. But I mean, even with we've come a long way, obviously, in understanding what menstruation is, and even just the understanding of the biology and the physiology behind it. There's nothing dirty about it, but these old cultural things remain. And I think that there has been some big movements towards destigmatizing in periods in general. So I mean, we look at kind of the campaigns being put on by like Diva Cup and I can't remember the other one, but like period panties. I honestly think that those are some of the best campaigns around period awareness in general. And I think that educating how young boys are taught from an early age about periods. I have said many times, I have a young son and I talk to him about periods because it's a normal part of life, and he has a mom and a sister in the house, and he's just going to have to understand what it is. And it's nothing inappropriate. It's on his understanding, but to start young to, right away that it's just a thing that happens. It's normal. Start there for one thing, because otherwise he's going to hear it from some boys in junior high and he's going to have a bad idea about it.
Because I said that reminds me quite well of sex ed that I received. It's like the boys were split away and then the girls were all taught about periods, and then you would never know what went on in that class, and it was like, oh, no idea what that was all about. Bye then.
Yes, and how is that doing anybody any good? Like, they're going to be very much confused if it's already shameful to talk about vaginas. Periods are a whole nother layer, and now you're going to exclude boys from knowing how it works. And no wonder you get these memes where people go online and talk about my boyfriend just told me he thought that I could hold it in while we were on a car trip.
Hold what in?
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
What is it? In this context.
There's a really good Facebook group called did you fail a sex education, or did sex education fail you? And it's like everybody should go become part of that group. It's hilarious because it's constant stuff like this. It's like
graduate high. Okay, I've got it. To graduate high school, you've got to take a 3-part literacy test in sex ed.
That's actually a great idea.
I like that.
Yeah.
Like, presumably there's not like a practical
You
element of
could
it, or
have
maybe
a practical
there is.
element to it, but that may be, slightly over-egging that pudding.
So
probably, but I mean, it's a fair point.
Can we say
Education
that
would probably solve this.
I was just going to say, so can we say that the number one thing is stop hiding it from boys at a young age?
Yeah.
Like, stop hiding it. It's nothing taboo about it. It's a very normal thing. It happens to many, many people. So stop, letting them be sheltered from the reality of what goes on, because it already, even the most subtle act of separating them. I mean, I understand that you do this in elementary school and middle school. There's reasons why you would separate them, but they should be being taught about it in the boys' class too. Like, there should be
because it was just like
an awareness about it.
Yeah, it's like just they've got a separate class over there, and we'll go and play football.
Yeah, I know it is. That's another conversation. Another episode we could talk about was what was sex education like, because it's really unbalanced for one thing.
Yeah, we need to talk about that on another episode for sure. I didn't even have sex education. That's a whole other story. Not helpful. Okay, so I think we have time for, maybe one more topic. I want to talk about, how about when we're talking about all of the products and things that are marketed for vaginal and vulva usage, to what extent are these things that are going to be useful, and to what extent are they perhaps perpetuating some of the myths that we've been attempting to debunk this evening? And do y'all have any experiences with any products in this area?
I feel like I've been answering all the questions first. So Phoebe, would you like to go first? That's right.
So it says pH balance intimate wash. This is what this is. It says pH balance intimate wash. Oh, my finger's in the way. So that's what it says. So we'll read the bag. So it says pour into hand or flannel and apply. Rinse thoroughly. Use it daily to feel fresh and confident. Washes are designed for the unique needs of intimate skin, gynecologically tested and gentle enough for daily use. And did you know period, sex, tight clothes, menopause, even some body washes and soaps can disrupt the vaginal area balance? Only pH balancing your intimate area has the help and support that you need to feel fresh all day long.
Aha. I noticed very careful wording in that with again with the euphemisms about feeling fresh. I'm not sure what, particular function this is performing other than making you wonder whether you are fresh, and who knows what that means.
Fresh and fragrant.
Yeah.
Smell like flower.
My opinion is that if you're going to use something, at least use something that's designated for the area, because it is a very sensitive area that can get disrupted really easily. I think that they shouldn't say things like feel fresh and anything that makes you think that without this product you are not this. So this product will make you better, basically is what it's saying. And the truth is that you're good the way you are. And we don't need those things. We survived for millennia without these cleaning scented products. You don't need it. And understanding how the whole system works, generally you don't need to get up in there. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel fresh. And there's ways to do it in a healthy way and ways to do it in an unhealthy way. So it's knowing which areas are safer to kind of freshen up, if you will. But even just the idea of having to do it daily or you're not going to be fresh, that seems like a bit of a misnomer for me.
It does feel like you're trying to eliminate what is natural natural vulva flora, bacterial flora.
Now, if
which
I'm camping,
is really quite If I'm at a music festival,
yes,
I ain't using those showers on a regular basis. I ain't. You see, the festival showers, unless I bought VIP tickets or I'm in a yurt or something, I ain't using festival showers, mate.
They're not completely useless, but they're over marketed for the necessity. That's basically what it is.
Right. The idea that you need this on the daily is, if you do, maybe there's a medical situation.
A daily download
for a
is probably
doctor.
not what you need.
Right.
Yes. And again, that book I mentioned earlier there was a whole chapter on, the vaginal flora and the microbiome. And it's one of those areas of healthcare and medicine that I think, we are just now beginning to learn about the importance of. And a lot of these products, may be disrupting that more than they are helping it. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when
in general,
things.
The human, reproductive parts are very sophisticated in how they have evolved to naturally do the things they're supposed to do. So have a little respect.
Yeah.
Have a little respect
absolutely.
for how it's supposed to be. And whatever. Phoebe, you and I had a chat earlier about this, and it's applicable across the board. It's pretty good the way it is, but if you need to, at least use the proper products.
Yeah. And speaking of which, to kind of end on a high note, are there any particular products that you do enjoy using or introducing to that area?
What's in my magical bag of treats?
I would love to know.
Hang on, that's a banana.
Oh, hey, wait a minute. What's that doing in there?
Emergencies.
Fair enough.
But yes, I do have some magical items in here. If you're going to start, having fun down in your, genitalia area, use products that you're comfortable with. Use products that you want to use. Don't feel that you've got to have the largest, most internal splitting dildo that you can have. I've got a whole range of products here that do a whole range of different things. And they're all a lot of fun, but you've got to use them if you want to use them and they're right for you. Don't ever feel pressured to get, the biggest, vagina splitting dildo that you can find in your local sex shop. I mean,
unless that's what you want.
If you want that, that's fine. I mean, this lovely external use only for mainly clitoral stimulation is brilliant. I mean, we've got other things here where you can have internal and external stimulation at the same time. I mean, that's fairly wonderful. I mean, wonderful remote control here, so you just insert and control it through your telephone if you really want to, and then you just have your more standard one, which is here. But what I do recommend, and I do have to say this above all else, clean your toys after each use. Clean them using products which are designed for the toy that you have, and look after them properly. But most of all, look after yourself as well. I mean, just make sure that you are using the correct lube for the toys that you have. I mean, water-based or silicone-based or other bases, make sure that it's for the correct toys that you use. I mean, I wouldn't go trying to insert this inside my vaginal canal, but I would quite happily insert this and just have a lot of fun. But I wouldn't do it without any of the wonders that come out of this here, because if I was to stick this up there, no matter how great the lubricating glands that are in my vaginal canal are, they ain't going to be as good as if I just go...
Yes. Lubrication. Yeah. We preach this a lot here. It's great. Use it. Yes. You're not defective if you're using lube. You're being smart.
You're a sensible human, not a silly human. Silly humans go, I don't need no lube. And then they wonder why it hurts. Sensible human gets all wet, messy and sticky, and then they have a lot of fun. And then they go at the end of it. Whereas, a painful, unexciting, cooperative set of sex toys isn't going to be much fun, no matter how much you push and pull and go.
Even understanding the common
lube is your friend.
I was gonna say, even understanding the common myths about I think Emily Nagoski calls it something like arousal incongruence. Not everybody is it doesn't always happen like that, right? So there's nothing wrong with you if you get super wet or if you don't get wet at all. There's nothing wrong with either of those things. That's not always like a step 1, step 2, step 3. So get your lube out and know the difference between your water bases and your silicones. Yeah.
Yes, and practice on yourself by yourself before you feel compelled to perform in a certain way. It's not a performance. That's Enjoy what is happening to your own body. It's not for someone else's pleasure. It's for yours too. So I love that we're witnessing the banana situation here. And while that takes place, Erin, do you have the results of our poll?
I was just looking for it. I had it up here for a second ago, but I think I have the correct results right now. So the poll question we asked earlier is, have you ever broken up with someone because of their genitals? And the answer was 88% no. So there you go. 88% of people don't care. It's fine.
So toxic 18-year-old me was in the 12% minority then.
Well, there you have it. Most people are not bothered about it. So the people have spoken.
That's a proper relief to know that. That's really quite, satisfying to know that the audience around these parts enjoy their parts.
That's right.
Yes.
And other people's parts.
Yes. All the parts.
Parts fun known is what I say. Parts fun known.
Yes. I love it. And as we wrap up this evening, what other resources or advice do y'all have that could help us find love or acceptance for our perfectly imperfect vulvas, or anyone else who's worried about it?
Well, if you're ever in London and you get the chance, visit the London Vagina Museum.
Wow.
Yes.
Yep.
London Vagina Museum. I'm writing that down. I love it.
And if you
All
don't
right.
have access to hop on a plane, if you're not local, you can always look online. There are a few really good resources like the labialibrary.com. There's been projects out there where people will photograph thousands of different vulvas, so you can have a better idea of what is normal. And then as a book recommendation, I recommend The Vagina Bible by Dr. Jennifer Gunther. It will help demystify a lot of these kind of common misunderstandings that we have about the vagina, the vulva, the whole thing.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And those are exactly the kind of resources I was thinking of too. You mentioned another book, Erin, by Emily Nagoski. Come As You Are is one that I always recommend. It's not just about sort of appreciate and loving your own body, but also, enjoying and experiencing pleasure in a way that works for you. And I thought that one was awesome.
Yeah.
And another website that people could visit is allvulvasarebeautiful.com, which is similar, I think, to the one you were talking about, to the labia library, and just, being able to look and see what other people's bodies and vulvas look like, and seeing that there's a big diversity there. And that's great and normal. And you're okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been a great conversation, talking about all of this. I hope a lot of people go down to those resources and start to kind of work through the deconstruction of their own views on on vulvas in general, whether you have one or you love somebody who has one. I think that's a great idea.
I do too. Yeah. And just thinking about, where did these ideas that we have about them come from? And is that something that is really accurate or useful or helpful to anyone? Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
It's been a little bit cathartic for me. I wasn't expecting it to be as cathartic for me, but it's a little bit cathartic. Yeah.
This was good. This was a good vagina party, y'all.
It was a wonderful vagina party. I mean,
glad
I'm
we
a
did it.
penis-free person now. I enjoy a good vagina party.
Yes, this was fun. We'll have to do it again. And, maybe on a subsequent week, they can have a penis party one day. And,
I think an absolute at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Look forward to that one, folks.
Or we could do the sequel. Penis meets vagina.
Ooh.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us here tonight to have this conversation. And I hope you had your own kind of moments of kind of deconstruction and feeling better about what you have or what you see. To keep up with what's happening at the ACA, you can visit our website at atheist-community.org. That has been updated recently, and it has everything that's going on currently with the ACA. And if you want to see what's going on with all the different shows, that's a great resource for that. If you have any questions or comments, you can email this show in particular at sex@atheist-community.org, or you can email the ACA directly at tv@atheist-community.org. So you can direct those questions wherever you see fit, whether you want to talk to us continually about this conversation, or you have more questions or ideas for future episodes. That's a great way to get a hold of us here at this show, or if you have questions for the broader group of the atheist community of Austin. Another way that you can kind of catch up with what's going on with all of the atheist community of Austin programs is through tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. This is an audio only resource. So for those who have long shifts where you're allowed to listen to something, this is a great one for that. It has all of our shows, Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Nonprofits, and all of those, they're all uploaded on there in audio form only. So that's a great way to find everything that you're looking for. We also have other ways to connect with the community. We have a Facebook group. The Facebook group is a fan-run Facebook program or Facebook group. So if you can go on there and connect with people and send memes and just get to know people on that area as well. And then the next one would be the Discord. So those Discord users, I myself am not a great Discord user. I'm trying to get better at it. And I have stopped fumbling my way around Discord recently. The Discord community is also fan run. So if you want to connect in that way, there's tiny.cc/ACD Discord. And again, that is a fan run Discord. And they do a really great job over there. And last but not least, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the folks behind the scene who have been listening to this whole conversation and putting up with it all and or enjoying it a lot. I'm not sure. The crew cam. Thank you, crew. You have everybody behind the scenes. They work so hard. This is a program that runs, we're talking all throughout the week. We set up early. We set up the sound. We do a lot behind the scenes before the show even starts. So we really appreciate everybody who is a part of this. And if you are in the Austin area and would like to attend a live show, right now we do most of our shows via webcam, and we kind of get that way to connect with everybody. But we are committing to having one in-studio episode per month per show. So the next one is on February, what's the date? February 23rd, 24th, and 25th in studio in Austin at the library. We have Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, Talk Heathen, and the Atheist Experience. So please, if you're in the area, come down, connect. I say that as a Canadian. I will not be there, maybe someday. Sorry, 26th and not the 25th. So yeah, come on down and get to meet your fellow atheists and connect with everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Join us down there. And before we log off, Erin and Phoebe, thank you so much for this conversation and this party. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave us with?
I feel like Phoebe's got a good one here. I'm just thinking, just go and look in the mirror and and just appreciate everything that you have and how wonderful it is and how normal it is. And if you're struggling with insecurities about how you look, check out the resources that we mentioned earlier and realize that a whole wonderful array of spectrum of different things. Everything comes in all shapes and sizes, and there's really, honestly, as an esthetician who saw many, many, many different ones, there's nothing that we haven't seen. It's all very, very normal.
All I'll say is, as someone who's had both a prick and a fanny, don't think that that's the end. You may have a prick you don't like the look of. You may have a fanny you don't like the look of. But just try to understand the reasons why you may dislike the way it looks. Or try to unpick it a little bit more. Because it may be that, yes, okay, you genuinely have strong dislikes about it. But is there something deeper in there? For me, there was something a lot deeper. And now something a lot deeper can go in there. So there you go.
I love it. I love it.
Perfect.
Excellent. Words to live by. And on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And no matter what equipment you're working with, whether you have the standard issue, the bedazzled, or the latest and greatest updated model, go out and give yourself a big ol' orgasm. Or better yet, give somebody else one.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.